They say blood is thicker than water. But in my family, only money holds weight. For 32 years, I was the invisible black sheep while my brother was the golden boy. But when his empire crumbled and my mother screamed, asking if I wanted them to sleep on the street, she forgot one thing. I hold the deed to the only roof left, and a 15-year-old legal secret that turns my refusal into a life sentence. My name is Kayla Henshaw. I was currently staring at a topography map on my dual monitors at Viridia Design Group, trying to calculate the cut and fill ratio for a corporate campus in downtown Seattle. To most people, this was just a mess of contour lines and elevation markers. But to me, it was a puzzle of gravity and flow. I needed to divert stormwater runoff into a series of rain gardens without compromising the structural integrity of the retaining wall. It was precise. It was logical. It was quiet. It was everything my life outside of these walls was not. I had been a landscape architect for 7 years now. My colleagues knew me as the woman in the corner office who always brought a bagged lunch and never joined the after-work happy hours. They respected my work, specifically my knowledge of native plant palettes and soil hydrology, but they knew nothing about me. They did not know that the reason I never bought a round of drinks was that every spare penny I earned went into a pit of endless maintenance on a property that everyone told me to sell. The clock on the wall ticked past 6 in the evening. The office was emptying out, the hum of computer towers replacing the chatter of designers. I rolled up the blueprints, placed my scale ruler back in its velvet case, and grabbed my keys. The drive home was my decompression chamber. As the concrete jungle of the city faded into the rear-view mirror, replaced by the rolling hills of the outer county, my chest finally loosened. I did not live in a gated community or a high-rise condo. I lived at Willow Creek. It was a 4-acre farmstead that my grandfather, Arthur, had left me when he passed away 5 years ago. The main house was a Victorian farmhouse built in 1922. It had peeling white paint, a wraparound porch that groaned when the wind blew from the north, and plumbing that sang a high-pitched aria whenever you flushed the toilet on the second floor. It was not a smart home. It did not have heated floors or voice-activated lighting. What it had was bones. It had history. It had 4 acres of fertile soil where I spent my weekends nursing ancient oak trees and battling invasive kudzu. To my mother, Deborah, Willow Creek was a teardown. To my brother, Tyler, it was a liquid asset waiting to be cashed out. To me, it was the only place on earth where I did not feel like a mistake. I pulled my 10-year-old Subaru into the gravel driveway, the crunch of stones under tires sounding like a welcome home greeting. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment, looking at the house. The roof shingles were curling up near the chimney. I winced. That was going to cost at least $8,000 to fix properly. I had $3,000 saved in the emergency fund. I would have to pray for a dry autumn. I walked up the porch steps, avoiding the third plank which was rotting through, and unlocked the heavy oak door. The smell hit me instantly. Old wood, dried lavender, and dust. It was the smell of my childhood summers with Grandpa Arthur, the only person who ever looked at me and saw something other than Tyler's shadow. I hung my coat and saw the mail pile on the console table, bills, a catalog for seeds, and a thick, cream-colored envelope with a return address embossed in black ink, Abernathy Associates. Attorneys at law. My stomach tightened. Mr. Abernathy was Grandpa's oldest friend and the executor of his estate. I had not heard from him since the probate closed. I slit the envelope open with my thumb. Dear Ms. Henshaw, as we approach the 33rd anniversary of your birth, this letter serves as a formal reminder of the evaluation clause stipulated in the last will and testament of Arthur James Henshaw. Per your grandfather's instructions, a review of the estate's condition and the beneficiary's stewardship will be conducted on the 1st of November. Please ensure all property records are accessible. Regards, Silas Abernathy. The evaluation clause. I had completely forgotten. Grandpa had been a meticulous man, a man who believed that ownership was a responsibility, not a right. He had put a condition in the will that I had to prove I was taking care of the place before the title became absolute and unchallengeable. I had 6 months. I looked up at the water stains spreading on the ceiling of the foyer. I needed to fix that roof. I went into the kitchen to make tea, the silence of the house wrapping around me. But silence in the Henshaw family was always the calm before a storm. My phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother. A picture where she was smiling too widely, her eyes tight with performed happiness. I debated ignoring it. I really did. But the guilt button was installed deep in my psyche, wired by 3 decades of conditioning. I swiped right. "Hello, Mother," I said, leaning against the granite island I had installed myself last year using reclaimed stone. "Kayla, I have been calling you all afternoon." Her voice was shrill, cutting through the peace of my kitchen. "Did you see the invitation Brittany sent for Noah's birthday?" Noah was my nephew, Tyler's oldest son. He was turning 7. "I saw it, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It looks elaborate." "Elaborate. It is going to be magnificent. Tyler has rented out the entire Adventure Zone park. They are having a private magician, a catering truck from that sushi place in the city, and a live pony carousel. It is going to be the event of the season for his class." I closed my eyes. Tyler, my brother, the serial entrepreneur who had never actually run a profitable business in his life. He was currently living in a rented Mediterranean-style villa in the wealthy part of Brentwood, driving a leased Porsche Cayenne and pretending he was a venture capitalist. His wife, Brittany, spent her days curating an Instagram feed that made their chaotic life look like a beige-toned magazine spread. Meanwhile, their 3 children were growing up thinking that screaming was a form of communication and that throwing iPads at walls was an acceptable way to deal with boredom. "That sounds like a lot," I said. "It is a celebration, Kayla. Which brings me to why I am calling. Tyler mentioned you haven't RSVP'd yet, and he put you down for the contribution towards the catering." I froze. "Contribution? What contribution?" "Well, you know how tight things are with the market right now," she said, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used whenever she talked about Tyler's finances. "Tyler is just temporarily illiquid until his new crypto investment platform launches next quarter. He needs a little help covering the sushi truck. It is only $2,000. I told him you would be happy to handle it as your gift to Noah." $2,000, 2/3 of my roof fund. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, foreign and sharp. "Excuse me. No, Mom, I cannot give Tyler $2,000 for a sushi truck for a 7-year-old's birthday party. I have bills to pay. Willow Creek needs repairs." "Repairs." She spat the word out like a curse. "You are still pouring money into that money pit. That place is a dump. Kayla, a rotting pile of wood in the middle of nowhere. Tyler lives in a villa. He maintains an image. He has a family. He rents that villa, Mom, and I own this dump. I am not paying for his party." "You are so selfish," she hissed. The venom in her voice was familiar. A well-worn track. "You have always been like this, hoarding your money, hiding away in that barn like a hermit. Your brother is trying to build a future. He is trying to give his children memories, and you are just jealous. You are jealous because he has a life and you have dirt. I am not jealous. Mom, I am broke. Because unlike Tyler, I pay my own debts. Don't you dare speak about him like that. He is a visionary. He is going to be a millionaire before you even figure out how to get a husband. If you do not send that money, don't bother coming. We don't need your sour face ruining Noah's day." "Fine," I said, my hand trembling slightly. "I won't come. Happy birthday to Noah." I hung up before she could scream again. I stood there, the silence of the kitchen rushing back in, but now it felt heavy, selfish. The words echoed. I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to work. I grabbed the ladder from the utility closet. If I couldn't fix the roof tonight, I could at least check the attic for the source of the leak near the chimney. I needed to know exactly how bad the rot was before Mr. Abernathy's evaluation in November. I climbed up into the attic. It was stiflingly hot up there, smelling of fiberglass insulation and dry pine. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam cutting through the dust motes dancing in the stagnant air. I navigated across the wooden beams, careful not to step between them and put a foot through the drywall ceiling below. I made my way to the chimney stack. The brickwork was damp. I could see the water trail, a dark stain running down the masonry. It was bad, but maybe patchable for now. As I turned to shine the light into the far corner, looking for more leaks, the beam hit something metallic. It was an old army footlocker, tucked deep into the eaves, half buried under a roll of pink insulation. I had cleared out most of Grandpa's things years ago, donating his clothes and organizing his books, but I had never seen this box. I crawled over to it. It was locked with a rusted padlock, but the hasp was so corroded that a firm tug pulled the screws right out of the rotting wood of the trunk. I opened the lid. Inside, there were no gold bars or stacks of cash. It was filled with file folders, organized with the same manic precision I used in my landscape drafts. Bank statements from the 90s, legal correspondence, and right on top, a leather-bound notebook with the year 2005 stamped on the cover. I picked it up. The leather was cracked. I opened it to the first page. It was Grandpa Arthur's handwriting, spiky and deliberate. The first line read, "The truth about Deborah." I sat there on the insulation, the flashlight beam trembling in my hand. I turned the page. June 4th, 2005. I spoke to the doctors again today. They confirmed it. The money I sent for the surgery never reached the hospital. Deborah says there was a clerical error, but I saw the new car in her driveway. She thinks I'm senile. She thinks I do not see, but I see everything. I have to protect Kayla. She is the only one with iron in her blood, but she is too soft with them. I must make the will bulletproof. I must create the fail-safe. My heart hammered against my ribs. 2005. That was the year Grandpa had his first hip replacement. The year Mom told us insurance wouldn't cover it and asked us to dip into our college funds to help. I had given her everything I had saved from my summer job at the nursery. Tyler had given nothing. I flipped through more pages. It was all there. A chronicle of 15 years of financial abuse. Every time Mom had asked for money for emergencies, for taxes, for medical bills, Grandpa had documented the lie. He had tracked the money. He knew. And he had left this for me. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. A text from Brittany. "So sad you can't make it. T says we really need that $2K though. Maybe you can Venmo it. We're kinda short for the deposit tomorrow. Love ya, XOXO." I looked at the text. Then I looked at the diary in my hand. For 32 years, I had been the doormat. I had been the ugly duckling, the ATM, the reliable backup plan. I sat alone in the dark, dusty attic of the house they all despised, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel the urge to cry. I felt something else, something cold and hard, like the bedrock I anchored my retaining walls into. I closed the diary. I was not going to send the money. I was not going to sell the house. And come November 1st, when Mr. Abernathy arrived, I would be ready. "No," I whispered to the empty attic. "Not this time." I put the diary back in the box, but I took the folder labeled Trust Fund Violations with me. I climbed down the ladder, my hands steady, my mind clear. The ghost of perfection that my mother had chased all her life, the image of the perfect. Wealthy family she tried to project was about to be exorcised, and I was going to be the one to perform the ritual. 2 months had passed since I found the diary in the attic, and the season had turned. The humidity of late summer had snapped, replaced by the crisp, biting wind of an early October at Willow Creek. The leaves on the ancient oaks were turning a burnt orange, and the mornings were cold enough to see my breath in the uninsulated hallway. I kept my head down, focused on my work and my secret repairs. But the silence from my family had shifted frequencies. It was no longer the silence of indifference. It was the silence of a held breath before a scream. The first cracks appeared in the form of phone calls. My mother, Deborah, had never been a woman who asked for small things. She dealt in grand gestures and substantial sums, but starting in late September, the pattern changed. She began calling me on Tuesday mornings, her voice breathless and rushed, asking for odd, specific amounts of money. She told me she needed $350 for a ticket to a charity gala for the symphony because her credit card had been flagged for suspicious activity while she was traveling. She told me she needed $400 for a church raffle commitment she had forgotten about. She told me she needed $200 to tip the movers who were rearranging her antique furniture. I knew she was lying. I knew it because I had access to the public records of the charities she mentioned, and none of them had events scheduled. I knew it because my mother never tipped movers $200. I gave her the money the first time, just to see what would happen. The transfer went through, and within an hour, I saw a social media post from Brittany, Tyler's wife, showing off a new set of acrylic nails and a spa lunch. The caption read, "Self-care is non-negotiable." My mother was not doing charity. She was plugging leaks in Tyler's hull with teacups of water. Then came the visit. I was in the middle of a client presentation preparation at Viridia Design Group. My desk was covered in sketches for a rooftop garden project in the financial district. I was debating the load-bearing capacity of a specific planter box when a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up, expecting my project manager. Instead, I saw Tyler. My brother looked like he had stepped out of a catalog for young billionaires. He was wearing a navy blue suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life, a crisp white shirt, and loafers that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But up close, the image wavered. There were dark circles under his eyes that concealer could not quite hide, and a nervous energy in his hands that made him constantly adjust his cufflinks. "Tyler," I said, standing up. The office hummed around us, telephones ringing and printers whirring. He looked out of place here, amidst the drafting tables and the smell of graphite and coffee. "What are you doing here?" "Just happened to be in the neighborhood," he said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thought I would stop by and see where the magic happens. You have been here, what, 6 years?" "7, I corrected. "Right, 7. He looked around the open-plan office, his eyes scanning the equipment, the expensive plotters, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. "Nice setup. Viridia is a top-tier firm, right? They must pay you well." The question was casual, but his eyes were predatory. He wasn't looking at my work. He was looking at my earning potential. "I do okay," I said, guarding my words. "Is everything all right? Is Mom okay?" "Mom is fine. Everyone is fine." "Great. Actually," he picked up a scale model of a park I was designing. He turned it over in his hands, not with respect for the craftsmanship, but as if estimating its pawn value. "I am just wrapping up a seed round for the new venture. The crypto market is volatile, you know. But the potential for yield is infinite. We are talking about generational wealth. Kayla." He launched into a pitch. It was a reflex for him. He talked about blockchain integration and decentralized finance, using buzzwords that sounded impressive but meant nothing when strung together. He praised my stability, calling me the rock of the family, a compliment that tasted like ash, because I knew it was a prelude to a request. "I am actually looking for a few more angel investors," he said, his voice lowering. "Just a bridge loan. Really. To cover the liquidity gap before the big institutional money hits next month. I could get you in on the ground floor, tripled returns in 90 days, guaranteed." "I can't, Tyler," I said, cutting him off. "I have the house repairs. I don't have liquidity." His jaw tightened. For a split second, the mask slipped, and I saw pure, unadulterated panic. Then the smile plastered back on. "Right, the house. That old shack." He laughed, a brittle sound. "Well, your loss. Just don't come crying to me when I'm buying my own island." He left abruptly. Saying he had a meeting with a venture capitalist, I watched him go, But I didn't sit back down immediately. I walked to the break room to get some water, my heart pounding a strange rhythm of warning. The break room shared a thin wall with the hallway near the elevators. As I poured water into my mug, I heard a voice. It was muffled, but raised in anger. I moved closer to the wall. It was Tyler. He hadn't left. He was pacing by the elevators. "I told you I would have it," he was hissing into his phone. "You cannot call my wife. Marcus, do not bring Brittany into this. It is a temporary freeze. The bank is just look. Give me 48 hours. I have a lead. My sister, no. She is difficult, but she has assets. I can leverage the no. Don't you dare file that motion." The elevator dinged, and his voice cut off as he stepped inside. I stood in the break room, the cold water in my hand forgotten. She has assets. He was talking about Willow Creek. He wasn't just broke. He was underwater, and he was already planning how to use my life raft to save himself. The storm broke 3 weeks later. It didn't happen with a bang, but with a notification on my phone newsfeed. I was eating a sandwich at my desk when the headline scrolled past local entrepreneur sued for alleged crypto Ponzi scheme. I clicked the link. There was no photo of Tyler yet, but the details were unmistakable. Tyler J. Henshaw, founder of Nebula Future Tech, was named in a class action lawsuit filed by 20 investors claiming fraud, misappropriation of funds, and breach of fiduciary duty. The article mentioned that the Securities and Exchange Commission was launching a parallel investigation. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Come over," she said. Her voice was not shrill. It was dead. Now, I left work early. I drove to the city, to the luxury high-rise condominium where my mother lived. It was a place of white marble and gold trim, a fortress of perceived status. The doorman gave me a pitying look as I walked in. He knew. In buildings like this, the staff always knew before the family did. I took the elevator up to the penthouse floor. The door to apartment 42B was unlocked. The scene inside was something out of a Greek tragedy performed by reality television stars. My mother was sitting on her cream-colored Italian leather sofa, her back rigid. Tyler was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands, his tie undone. Brittany was standing by the window, looking out at the city she felt she owned, sobbing uncontrollably while holding a glass of wine that was dangerously close to spilling on the silk drapes. The children were nowhere to be seen. Presumably, they had been banished to the media room with noise-canceling headphones. "It is a witch hunt," Tyler mumbled into his hands as I walked in. "The market crashed. That is not a crime. They knew the risks. They signed the waivers." "They are seizing the house," Brittany wailed. She turned to look at me, her mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. "Kayla, they came this morning, men in suits. They put a notice on the door. We have to be out by Friday. They took the Cayenne. They even took the lease papers for the Rover." "Sit down, Kayla," my mother said. Her voice was icy calm. It was the calm of a general who had already decided who to sacrifice to win the war. I sat on the edge of an armchair, keeping my distance. "Is it true?" I asked. "The lawsuit. Civil and potentially criminal," Tyler said, lifting his head. His eyes were red. "My lawyer says if I can pay back the principal to the primary investors about $400,000, they might drop the criminal charges. They just want their money, but all my accounts are frozen, even the offshore ones. And the rent on the villa is 6 months overdue," Mom added. The landlord used the lawsuit as grounds for immediate eviction. I looked at them. I should have felt pity. They were my family, and their world was burning. But all I could feel was the weight of the diary in my attic, the 15 years of theft my grandfather had documented. This was not bad luck. This was karma arriving with a subpoena. "So, what is the plan?" I asked. My mother stood up. She smoothed the front of her Chanel skirt. She walked over to the fireplace and adjusted a silver picture frame. "I have spoken to my broker," she said. "I am listing this apartment tomorrow morning. It is a seller's market. If we price it for a quick sale, we can have cash in escrow in 30 days. You are selling your home, I asked, surprised. My mother loved this apartment. It was her identity. I am liquidating an asset to save my son, she corrected. The proceeds will cover the restitution to the investors and the legal fees. It will keep Tyler out of prison. But where will you live? I asked. And where will Tyler and Brittany live? My mother turned to face me. The look in her eyes was one of absolute entitlement. It was not a question she was about to ask. It was a declaration of fact. We are a family. Kayla, when one of us falls, the others catch him. I am sacrificing my home. Tyler has lost his. That leaves one property in the Henshaw name. My blood ran cold. No, it is big enough, Mom continued, ignoring me. The farmhouse has 4 bedrooms. The attic can be converted. The barn has electricity. Tyler and Brittany and the kids can take the upper floor. I will take the master downstairs. You can move into the small guest room or the study. Mom, no, I said, standing up. My voice shook, but not from fear, from rage. Willow Creek is my home. It is my workspace. It is not a commune. So we sleep on the street. Mom's voice rose, the scream finally breaking through the calm surface. Is that what you want? Your brother in jail? Your nephews in a shelter? Your mother homeless at 65? You are not homeless, I argued. You have money left in the trust. You can rent a place. Tyler can get a job. A job, Tyler scoffed from the floor. I am a CEO. Kayla, I cannot flip burgers. I need a base of operations to rebuild. I need a mailing address to handle the legal correspondence. I just need 6 months, maybe a year. I am not asking you, Kayla. Mom stepped closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of jasmine and desperation. I am telling you, I am your mother. That house came from my father. It should have been mine to begin with. You have lived there rent-free for 5 years while Tyler built a business. Now it is your turn to pay back into this family. It wasn't rent-free, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I paid for the roof. I paid for the plumbing. I paid the taxes. And Grandpa left it to me because he knew you would sell it. He left it to you because you manipulated a senile old man, she shouted. But that doesn't matter now. The movers are coming on Friday. We are bringing what furniture we can save. You need to clear out the master bedroom and the upstairs rooms. Get rid of that junk you keep in there. I won't do it, I said. Then you are no daughter of mine, she spat. And if you close that door on us, I will make sure everyone in this town, every client you have, every friend you think you made knows that you let your family rot. I will go to the press. I will tell them the sister of the disgraced CEO is sitting on a multi-million-dollar estate and refusing to house her own flesh and blood. She knew my weak point, my reputation, my privacy. Viridia Design Group did not like scandals. If my mother dragged my name through the mud alongside Tyler's, I could lose my license. I could lose the only thing I had built for myself. I looked at Tyler, who was watching me with a smug expectation. He knew Mom would break me. He was counting on it. I took a deep breath. I thought of Mr. Abernathy. I thought of the evaluation coming on November 1st. If I refused them outright, now, the chaos would destroy my work and my mental health before the legal deadline. But if I let them in, they would think they had won. But I also remembered the clause, the evaluation clause, and the other secret Mr. Abernathy had hinted at. They wanted to play a game of chicken fine. Friday, I said, my voice hollow. Good, Mom said, instantly switching back to her managerial tone. Make sure the heating is working. Brittany gets cold easily. I walked out of the apartment without another word. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly. As I drove back to the country, the city lights fading behind me. I wasn't crying. I was calculating. They were coming to Willow Creek. They were bringing their chaos, their debts, and their entitlement to my sanctuary. They thought they were invading a defenseless farmhouse. They didn't realize they were marching straight into a trap that had been set 15 years ago. Let them come. I would be waiting. The word Friday was still hanging in the stale. Conditioned air of the penthouse, a verbal contract I had uttered in a moment of panic. But as the initial relief on my mother's face settled into a look of triumphant expectation, the reality of what I had just agreed to began to bleed in. "Excellent," my mother said, clapping her hands once, the sound sharp like a pistol crack. "Now, logistics. We will need the master suite. Obviously, I cannot do stairs with my knees the way they are. Tyler and Brittany, you can take the upper floor. The children can bunk in the attic room." "The attic?" Brittany wrinkled her nose, looking up from her phone where she was likely deleting photos of their impending eviction. "Is it insulated? I read that old houses have asbestos. I am not putting my babies in a cancer trap. Deborah?" "It is fine." Tyler waved his hand dismissively. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming with a new proprietary light. "Actually, I was thinking about that barn you have out back, the one you converted." My stomach dropped. "The studio." "Yeah, whatever you call it," Tyler said. "I remember you put in Wi-Fi and a decent HVAC system. That will be perfect for my command center. I need absolute quiet to restructure the portfolio. Brittany and I can sleep in the loft space there. We will be out of your hair. You won't even know we are on the property." "No," I said. The word slipped out before I could check it. Tyler paused, his brow furrowing. "Excuse me." "That is my office." "Tyler," I said, my voice gaining a tremor of steely resolve I did not know I possessed. "That is where I work. That is where I earn the money that pays the mortgage you are currently mocking. It is full of blueprints, client files, and expensive equipment. It is not a guest house." "Kayla, be reasonable," my mother interjected, her tone dropping to that dangerous, reasonable register she used before an explosion. "Your brother is in a crisis. He needs a professional environment to get back on his feet. You can move your little drawing table into the kitchen for a few months. It is just gardening, isn't it? You do not need a whole building for that." "Just gardening," I repeated, the insult landing with the familiarity of an old bruise. "I am a licensed landscape architect, Mother, and no, the barn is off limits." "Well, we can't stay in the main house with 3 kids and 2 dogs crowded into one floor," Tyler snapped, his veneer of charm evaporating instantly. "The noise level alone would make it impossible for me to take calls. The barn is the only logical solution." "There is no solution," I said. Standing up, the fog of obligation that had clouded my judgment 5 minutes ago was lifting. I looked at them, really looked at them. They were not a family in need asking for shelter. They were a swarm of locusts looking for a new field to strip bare. "I made a mistake. You cannot come to Willow Creek." The room went silent, the kind of silence that precedes a car crash. "What did you say?" my mother whispered. "I said no," I stated, my voice ringing clear. "I cannot house 7 people. My septic system is 80 years old. It will collapse within a week. The wiring cannot handle the load of your electronics, and frankly, I do not want you there." Tyler let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "You don't want us there. It is a 4-acre estate. Kayla, you are rattling around in that ghost house like a spinster witch. We are doing you a favor by bringing some life into it." "A favor?" I looked at him, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. 5 years ago, when Grandpa left me the deed, you drove out to see it. Do you remember what you said? Tyler, you stood on the porch. You didn't even take your sunglasses off, and you called it a pigsty. You said it was a rotting pile of firewood, and that you wouldn't let your dog sleep there. Well, now you want to move your whole family into the pigsty." "I was joking," Tyler said, his face flushing a mottled red. "God, you never could take a joke. You hold on to grudges like they are currency." "It wasn't a joke," I said. "It was what you believed because you thought you were too good for it. And now that you have lost everything, you think you can just snap your fingers and take what I have built. No, I am not doing it." I turned to grab my purse. That was the trigger. My mother surged forward, blocking my path to the door. Her face was contorted, the mask of the elegant socialite falling away to reveal the terrified, vicious woman beneath. "How could you?" she screamed, slipping into a frantic mix of accusation and hysteria. "How can you be so selfish? After everything we have done for you, I gave you life, I raised you, and this is how you repay me by watching us drown." "I am not watching you drown," I said, gripping the strap of my bag. "I am refusing to let you pull me under with you." "So we sleep on the street," she shrieked, the volume so loud it physically hurt my ears. "Is that what you want? You want to see your mother and your nephews sleeping in a cardboard box under a bridge? Is that what will finally make you happy? You spiteful little girl." "Stop it, Mom," I said, but she was past reasoning. "You are cold-blooded," she yelled, jabbing a finger toward my chest. "You are an ungrateful, unnatural child. Tyler needs you. He is your brother. Blood is supposed to matter more than your precious privacy if you walk out that door." "Kayla, do not think you are just leaving a room. You are killing this family." Brittany was crying loudly now, a theatrical sobbing that felt designed for an audience, clutching her children who had wandered out of the media room, looking confused and frightened. Tyler stood with his arms crossed, looking at me with pure hatred, as if I were the one who had embezzled his investors' money. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my mind was strangely, beautifully clear. For 30 years, I had been afraid of this moment. I had been afraid of her anger, of her rejection, but now that it was washing over me, I realized something important. It could not touch me. Not anymore. I had the deed. I had the truth. "I hope you find a solution," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. "But the solution is not my house." I stepped around my mother. She grabbed at my arm, her nails digging into my coat. But I pulled away. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the hallway. Behind me, the screaming continued, a cacophony of entitlement and rage. But as the heavy door clicked shut, the sound was severed. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to clasp them together to stop the trembling. I rode the elevator down 42 floors in silence, watching the numbers tick down. With every floor, the weight on my chest lightened. I had said no. I had actually said no. The drive back to Willow Creek took an hour, but I don't remember much of it. I was on autopilot, my brain replaying the scene in the penthouse on a loop. By the time I turned onto the gravel road leading to my property, the sun had set, and the sky was a bruised purple. I expected to come home to a dark house. Instead, I saw the twin beams of headlights cutting through the mist near my front gate. A black sedan was parked right next to the entrance of the driveway. As I pulled up, the driver's door opened, and a figure stepped out, leaning on a cane. It was Mr. Abernathy. He was wearing a trench coat that looked 2 sizes too big for his shrinking frame, and a fedora that he tipped as I rolled down my window. Silas Abernathy was 80 years old, a lawyer of the old school who believed in paper trails and moral absolutes. "Mr. Abernathy," I asked, killing the engine and stepping out into the cool night air, "is everything okay?" "It is late." "I could ask you the same thing, Kayla," he said, his voice raspy but strong. He looked at my face, likely seeing the strain and the residual adrenaline. "I tried to call, but your line was busy. I assumed the storm had finally made landfall." "You could say that." I let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "I just came from my mother's. I told them no. I told them they couldn't move in." Mr. Abernathy nodded slowly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Good. Good for you, girl. Arthur would have been proud, but I'm afraid the game is not over just because you refuse to play." "What do you mean?" "They are desperate, Kayla, and desperate people do not listen to the word no. They view it as a negotiation tactic." He reached into the back seat of his car and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I have been doing some digging since I sent you that letter. I have contacts at the county clerk's office and a few friends in the banking sector who still owe me favors." He handed me the envelope. It felt heavy in my hands. "What is this?" "That," he said, pointing a gnarled finger at the package, "is the reason your mother is screaming about sleeping on the street. It is not just Tyler's lawsuit, it is much worse. I opened the clasp and pulled out the top document. It was a bank statement from a lender I did not recognize, dated 3 months ago. I scanned the numbers. My eyes widened. "This is a second mortgage?" I asked, looking up at him. "On the penthouse." "A second mortgage and a high-risk personal loan," Abernathy corrected. "Look at the beneficiary of the transfer." I looked. The funds, nearly $600,000, had been wired directly to Nebula Future Tech, Tyler's company. "She leveraged everything," Abernathy said softly. "She didn't just give him her allowance. She mortgaged her equity. She bet the farm, or rather, the condo, on Tyler's crypto scheme. Now that the assets are frozen and the property values are tanking, the bank has called the loan. She is not just selling the apartment to help him. Kayla, the bank is foreclosing on her. She is penniless. Actually, she is worse than penniless. She is $500,000 in the hole." I stared at the paper. The wind rustled the dry leaves around our feet. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew for months that she was sinking, and she didn't say a word. She just waited until she had no other choice but to invade my home." "Precisely," Abernathy said, "and that is why I am here, because a woman who would burn her own safety net for a son who is a proven failure is a woman who has nothing left to lose. She will not stop at screaming. Kayla, you need to be prepared for what comes next." "What comes next?" I asked, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "Siege warfare," Abernathy said grimly. "They have played the victim card. Now, they will play the public opinion card. You need to steel yourself. But remember this, you hold the high ground. As long as you do not let them establish residency, as long as you do not give them a key, the law is on your side." I looked at the dark silhouette of Willow Creek behind me. It looked sturdy, ancient, and suddenly, very vulnerable. "I won't let them in," I said. "See that you don't," Abernathy said, "because if they get a foothold, getting them out will require more than just a refusal. It will require a war." He got back into his car, the engine purring to life. "I will be in touch. Kayla, watch your back." I watched his taillights fade down the road. I stood alone in the driveway, clutching the evidence of my mother's ultimate betrayal. She had destroyed herself for Tyler, and now, she was coming to destroy me to survive. I walked up the porch steps and locked the door behind me. I turned the deadbolt. Then, for the first time ever, I engaged the heavy brass security chain. It seemed like a small defense against the hurricane that was coming. But it was a start. The war did not begin with soldiers or lawyers. It began with a ring light and a sob story. I woke up 2 days after the confrontation to a phone that was vibrating so intensely it was slowly inching its way across my nightstand. It was 6 in the morning. I had 43 missed calls, over 100 text messages, and a flood of notifications from apps I rarely used. I picked up the phone, squinting against the harsh blue light. The first text was from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since Grandpa's funeral. "How could you? Those are kids. Kayla, you're sick." My stomach turned over. I opened Instagram. My feed was dominated by a repost from Brittany. It was a video, filmed in the front seat of their car, the lighting perfectly adjusted to catch the tear tracking down her cheek. "I don't usually do this," Brittany whispered to the camera, her voice trembling. "I try to keep things positive, but we are just so broken right now. We lost everything. Tyler worked so hard, and the market just turned on us. And now, we have nowhere to go." She wiped her eyes, glancing at the back seat where her children were sleeping conveniently framed in the shot. "We asked family for help," she continued, her voice hardening slightly. "Tyler's sister. She lives alone in this massive estate that our grandfather left well, that she manipulated him into leaving just to her. We just asked for a room, just a roof over our heads so my babies don't freeze, and she laughed at us. She slammed the door in our faces. She said she needs the space for her plants." She broke down then, a jagged, heaving sob. The caption read, Homeless family, betrayal, cruelty, pray for us, evil sister. The video had 200,000 views. I sat up in bed, the cold air of the room doing nothing to cool the flush of heat rising up my neck. I scrolled through the comments. What kind of monster does that? Drop the address? We'll go talk to her. Rich people are disgusting. Hoarding houses while family sleeps in cars. I hope she rots in that big house alone. It was a masterclass in narrative manipulation. Brittany had omitted the fraud, the second mortgage, the insults, and the fact that freezing meant staying in a 4-star hotel, which I knew they were currently doing because I could see the hotel's logo on the coffee cup in her cup holder. I went to work, hoping the digital storm would stay contained in the cloud. I was wrong. When I walked into Viridia Design Group, the atmosphere was different. Usually, the receptionists greeted me with a nod. Today, they stopped talking abruptly when I swiped my badge. They looked at their screens, but I could feel their eyes on my back as I walked toward my office. Around 10 o'clock, my boss, Marcus, called me into his office. Marcus was a man who cared about two things: clean lines in design and clean reputations in business. "Kayla, sit down," he said, not looking up from his tablet. He swiped a finger across the screen. "We have received some interesting emails this morning from the public." "It is a personal matter, Marcus," I said, my hands clenching in my lap. "My brother is going through a financial crisis, and my family is reacting poorly to my inability to solve it for them." "Poorly?" Marcus turned the tablet around. It was a screenshot of a review left on the Viridia Google business page. 1 star. The comment read, "Does Viridia support elder abuse? Their architect Kayla Henshaw left her own mother on the street. If she treats her family like trash, imagine how she treats clients." "There are 12 of these," Marcus said, his voice flat, "and a few calls to the front desk asking if we employ heartless witches. Now, I don't care about your family drama, Kayla, but I care about this firm. We bid on municipal contracts. We deal with city councils. Perception is reality. Fix this, or I will have to distance the firm from the source of the noise." "I understand," I said. "I will handle it." "Do," he said. "Take the afternoon off. Go solve it." It was a dismissal. I packed my bag, feeling the weight of 20 pairs of eyes burning into me as I walked out. The sanctuary of my work, the one place where I was judged solely on my competence, had been breached. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. When I turned onto the main road leading to Willow Creek, I saw them. My mother's car was parked on the shoulder, just outside my gate. It was raining a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked everything in gray. They were standing outside the gate, Mom, Tyler, Brittany, and the kids. They weren't trying to get in. They were staging a scene. Mom was wearing a thin coat, her hair deliberately disheveled. She was holding on to the iron bars of the gate, looking through them with a mixture of longing and despair. Brittany was standing a few feet away, holding up her phone, filming. I pulled my car into the driveway entrance, but I didn't get out. I watched them through the windshield. Brittany was directing them. "Okay, Mom. Look sadder. Put your hand to your chest. Noah, stop jumping in the puddle. Look cold. Huddle together." As soon as Brittany signaled action, my mother slumped against the gate, her face a mask of tragic suffering. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She looked like a martyr abandoned by the world, but I knew something they didn't. Last year, after a series of thefts in the area, I had installed high-definition security cameras on the gate pillars. They were hidden inside birdhouse structures so they wouldn't ruin the aesthetic of the entrance, and they recorded audio. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. I watched the live feed. "Make sure you get the no trespassing sign in the shot," Tyler was saying, checking his reflection in the car mirror. "It makes her look more militant. God, this rain is gross. How long do we have to do this?" "Just until we get the engagement up," Brittany said, adjusting her filter. "Okay, cut. That was gold. Mom, you look so pathetic. I love it." "I am cold," Mom snapped, dropping the act instantly. She shook the rainwater off her coat. Let's go back to the hotel. I need a hot toddy. Did you post it yet? Uploading now, Brittany said. Caption locked out in the rain. 45 degrees. Heartbroken. They all laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound that cut through the rain. They piled back into the car, the heater blasting, and drove off, leaving me sitting in my driveway, shaking with a rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. They were weaponizing my home against me. They were turning my sanctuary into a stage for their lies. I felt incredibly, crushingly alone. The silence of the house, usually my comfort, now felt like a siege. I needed to talk to someone who understood the rules of this twisted game. I called Mr. Abernathy. "Come to my office," he said. The moment he heard my voice, "Bring the recordings." An hour later, I was sitting in his office, a room that smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco. It was lined with law books that looked like they hadn't been moved since the Reagan administration. Mr. Abernathy watched the video from my security camera on his desktop computer. He watched it twice. When he turned to me, his expression was unreadable. "They are escalating faster than I anticipated," he said. "This is not just pressure, Kayla. This is character assassination. They are trying to make you a pariah, so that when they finally force their way in, the community will cheer them on." "It is working," I said, my voice dull. "My boss threatened to fire me today. My cousins are sending me hate mail. I feel like I'm going crazy. Maybe I should just let them stay in the barn, just to make it stop." "No." Abernathy slammed his hand on the desk. Dust motes danced in the air. "That is exactly what they want. Capitulatlian. If you let them in now, you validate every lie they have told. You admit guilt." He stood up and walked to a safe in the corner of the room. He dialed in the combination, the tumblers clicking loudly in the quiet office. He pulled out a thick, leather-bound document, the original last will and testament of Arthur James Henshaw. "Your grandfather was not a man who trusted easily, especially not after what your mother did to him in 2005, Abernathy said, placing the document in front of me. He knew that Deborah felt entitled to this property. He knew Tyler was weak, and he knew that one day they would come for you. He flipped the pages until he reached a section near the end, marked Article 9, the residency clause. "Read this," he commanded. I looked at the dense legal text. In the event that Deborah Henshaw or Tyler Henshaw attempt to establish forced residency, adverse possession, or squatting rights upon the property known as Willow Creek, or if they attempt to coerce the primary beneficiary into granting residency through harassment, intimidation, or public defamation, I looked up. He predicted the defamation. "He knew your mother," Abernathy said dryly. "Keep reading. Then any and all remaining interests, stipends, or dividends allocated to them from the Henshaw Family Trust shall be immediately and irrevocably forfeited. Furthermore, such actions shall constitute a breach of the no contest clause, effectively disinheriting them from any future claims." My mouth fell open. "Wait. The trust. The monthly allowance Mom gets. It is about $4,000 a month." Abernathy nodded. "It is the only steady income she has left, though she likely doesn't realize it comes from the trust your grandfather set up, not from some mysterious pension. If she forces her way into your house, she loses that income, forever." "So I just tell them," I asked, feeling a surge of hope. "I show them this, and they will back off because they need the money." "No," Abernathy said. He closed the folder. "If you warn them, they will stop the smear campaign and try a different angle. They will sue you for incompetency. They will try to get you declared mentally unfit to manage the estate. They will drag this out in court for years while you pay legal fees you cannot afford." "Then what do I do?" "You have to let them trip the wire," Abernathy said. His eyes were hard, flinty. "The clause requires them to attempt forced residency or coercion. The social media videos are harassment, yes, but to make it stick, to really cut them off, so they can never hurt you again, we need them to physically cross the line. We need them to break in, or we need them to believe they have won." You want me to let them in? I asked, confused. I want you to give them a limited, conditional entry that they will inevitably violate. Abernathy explained. We need proof that they are not guests, but hostile occupiers. We need them to think they have conquered you, because the moment they act like they own the place, the moment they change a lock, or move furniture, or damage property, they activate Article 9, and then we can crush them. I sat back in the leather chair. It was a trap, a bait switch. I had to endure their presence, their smugness, their noise, just long enough for them to hang themselves with their own entitlement. It will be hell, I said quietly. Living with them, seeing them every day knowing they hate me. It will be, Abernathy agreed. But it will be a short hell, and when it is over, it will be over for good. No more guilt, no more phone calls, total severance. I thought about the video of them laughing in the rain. I thought of the selfish comments on my phone. I thought of my mother's face when she screamed, "So we sleep on the street." They wanted a war, fine. I would give them a battlefield. How do we do it? I asked. Abernathy pulled out a notepad. You are going to write an email, not a text. An email. You need a paper trail. You are going to apologize for the misunderstanding. You are going to offer them the barn for a strictly limited time, say 2 weeks while they find new housing. You will list specific rules. No access to the main house. No alterations to the structure. No pets in the garden. They won't follow the rules, I said. Exactly. Abernathy smiled. A shark-like baring of teeth. That is the point. You are not inviting family in. Kayla. You are inviting defendants to a crime scene. I drove home with a plan. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating hum in my brain. I was an architect. I built structures that withstood the elements. I knew how to lay a foundation. That night, I sat at my computer. I typed out the email. Dear Mom and Tyler, I have done some thinking. The pressure from the last few days has been a lot, and maybe I was too harsh. I don't want you on the street. You can stay in the studio barn for 14 days, starting tomorrow, but there are conditions. I listed them out. I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. See, I knew you would come to your senses. We will be there at 8. Have the driveway gate open. No thank you. No, we appreciate it. Just victory. I walked over to the window and looked out at the barn. It was a beautiful structure, reclaimed wood and glass, filled with my books and my drafting table. Tomorrow, it would be filled with the people who had tormented me my entire life. I went to the utility drawer and took out a roll of duct tape and a marker. I labeled my food in the fridge. I moved my jewelry box to the hidden safe in the floorboards. I checked the batteries in the hidden cameras I had installed in the barn months ago to monitor my seedlings. Let them come. Let them bring their chaos. I was not the victim anymore. I was the executioner. And they were walking willingly to the block. The email I sent was not an olive branch. It was the lever that opened the trap door. They arrived at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. A convoy of entitlement that shattered the morning mist. Tyler led the way in a rented luxury SUV, followed closely by a moving truck that was far too large for a 2-week stay. My mother brought up the rear in her sedan, her face set in a grim expression of martyred endurance. I stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching them unload. I had explicitly stated in my email, personal items only, no furniture, the barn is fully furnished, yet, within 10 minutes, 2 movers were wrestling a massive, cheetah print armchair out of the truck. Tyler, I called out, walking down the steps. The agreement was bags only. There is no room for furniture in the studio. Tyler didn't even look at me. He was directing the movers with frantic hand gestures. Just put it in the corner, near the drafting table. Move the table if you have to. Careful, that chair is Italian velvet. The drafting table is bolted to the floor, I said, my voice calm. And that chair is not going inside. Relax, Kayla, Tyler snapped, finally turning to face me. He looked exhausted, his eyes manic. It is temporary. Mom needs her reading chair. It is for her back. You want her to suffer. I want you to follow the rules, I said. Rule number 3. No moving or altering existing furniture. We are customizing our living space, Brittany chimed in. Stepping out of the SUV, she was holding 2 leashes attached to a pair of standard poodles that looked as high-strung as she was. God, it smells like manure out here. Is that normal? It is a farm, Brittany, I said. And rule number 4, pets must be leashed at all times and are not allowed in the botanical nursery. They are trained, she scoffed, dropping the leashes immediately to check her phone. Go play. Babies. The dogs, liberated and confused, bolted. They didn't run for the open grass. They ran straight for the structure to my left, the lath house where I kept my shade-loving specimens. No, I shouted, dropping my mug. It shattered on the gravel. I ran, but I was too late. The babies had already bounded into the nursery. I heard the sickening crunch of pots overturning and the snap of delicate branches. By the time I got there, one of the poodles was digging frantically into a bed of moss I'd been cultivating for 3 years, while the other was using a rare Japanese maple sapling, a benikawa worth $400, as a chew toy. I stood frozen at the entrance of the nursery, my hands curled into fists. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to grab a shovel and chase them out, to scream at Brittany, to evict them right then and there. But then I felt the weight of the phone in my pocket. The residency clause. Coercion. Harassment. I did not scream. I pulled out my phone. I switched to video mode. I recorded the dog shredding the maple. I recorded Brittany standing by the car, ignoring my shouts, laughing at something on her screen. I recorded the damage to the moss bed. I walked back to the group. I was shaking, but my voice was deadly quiet. Your dog's just destroyed about $2,000 worth of inventory, I said to Tyler. Add it to the tab. Tyler waved a hand dismissively, not even looking up from a clipboard he was holding. We will settle up when my liquidity event hits. Now, help Mom with her bags. She is feeling faint. I didn't help Mom. I walked back to the main house, went inside, and locked the door. I saved the video to 3 separate cloud servers. Strike 1. The next 3 days were a masterclass in boundary violation. I continued to work at Viridia Design Group, needing the normalcy of the office to keep my sanity, but I spent every lunch break monitoring the security feeds from my phone. On Tuesday, I saw the first sign of the Trojan horse strategy Mr. Abernathy had warned me about. I was eating a salad at my desk when the notification popped up. Motion detected. South pasture. I opened the app. Tyler was walking the perimeter of the property. He wasn't alone. He was with 2 men in cheap suits who were carrying survey equipment. I turned up the audio gain on the camera hidden in the old birdhouse near the fence line. Perfect for high-density townhomes, Tyler was saying, pointing his arm across my wildflower meadow. We flattened the gradient here. Take out those old oaks, they are a liability anyway, and we can fit 4 units per acre, 16 units total. Pre-sales start at $500,000. And the zoning? One of the men asked. My sister is an architect, Tyler lied smoothly. She is handling the rezoning application. It is practically a done deal. This land is just sitting here doing nothing. It is a gold mine waiting to be tapped. What about the title? The other man asked. Public record shows it is in her name. She is just the placeholder. Tyler laughed. Family trust. I make the decisions. She just signs the papers. I watched, my blood boiling. He wasn't just staying. He was selling. He was soliciting investment fraud on my land. I took screenshots. I downloaded the audio clip. Strike 2. That evening, I came home to find my mother inside my kitchen. I had locked the back door. I knew I had. But the window above the sink was unlatched, and a step stool was kicked over beneath it. She was standing at the counter, rifling through a stack of my mail. She jumped when I walked in, clutching her chest. Jesus, Kayla, you shouldn't sneak up on people. This is my house, Mom, I said, placing my keys on the table. And you are trespassing. The agreement stated clearly no access to the main house. I needed salt, she said, her eyes darting to the hallway where my home office was. And I wanted to check if you had any mail for Tyler, important legal documents. There is no mail for Tyler here because he doesn't live here, I said. And the salt is in the pantry, not in my bank statements. I looked at the papers she had shuffled. She hadn't been looking for salt. She had been looking for the deed. She wanted to see whose name was actually on the title, or perhaps she was looking for the trust fund documents to see why her payments had stopped coming, though she wouldn't know that was my doing yet. Get out, I said. You are so hostile. She sniffed, straightening her cardigan. We are family. What is yours is ours. You have forgotten that. I haven't forgotten anything, I said. Out, she left, muttering about my ingratitude. As soon as she was gone, I checked the hidden camera I had installed in the hallway. It showed her trying the handle of my study door, which was locked. She had spent 10 minutes trying to pick the lock with a hairpin before giving up and moving to the mail. Strike 3. But the final blow, the one that would seal their fate, came on Friday. I had taken a half-day off work to meet with Mr. Abernathy, but I didn't tell them that. I parked my car a mile down the road and hiked back through the woods, entering the property from the rear tree line. I wanted to see what they did when they thought I was gone for 8 hours. I crept up to the edge of the clearing. The barn door was closed. But something was wrong. The brass handle I had installed 5 years ago was gone. In its place was a shiny silver keypad lock. My heart was hammered. He had changed the locks. I moved closer, staying in the shadow of the rhododendrons. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in, taped to the door. Right next to the new lock was a small, official-looking piece of paper. I couldn't read it from there, but I knew what it was. It was a printed confirmation of a change of address request from the post office. Tyler J. Henshaw, Residence 1, Willow Creek Lane, Unit B. He had created a Unit B. He was establishing residency. He was formally declaring this his home. I was about to turn back, to take this evidence straight to the sheriff, when I heard the sound of glass breaking. It came from the main house. I looked over. The French doors leading to the patio were smashed inward. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. I ran across the lawn, keeping low. I didn't go through the broken doors. I went to the side window of the living room, peering through the gap in the curtains. Tyler was inside. He was in the middle of the living room. He had torn the place apart. Books were pulled off shelves. Cushions were slashed open. He was looking for something specific. He was looking for money, or perhaps looking for the thing that terrified him most. He found it. He wasn't looking for cash. He was holding the old army footlocker, the one I had moved from the attic to the cabinet under the stairs. He had smashed the cabinet door to get it. He dumped the contents onto the floor, the files scattered, and there it was, the leather-bound diary. I watched, holding my breath. My phone camera pressed against the glass. Tyler picked up the diary. He opened it. I saw his face change as he read. His skin went from flush to pale, then to a deep, violent purple. He read the entry about the surgery money. He read the entry about Grandpa calling him a hollow man with a silver tongue. He screamed. It was a primal, animal sound of wounded narcissism. Lies, he shrieked at the empty room. He loved me. I was the favorite. He looked around wildly. His eyes landed on the fireplace. It was unlit, but there were logs and kindling ready for the evening. He grabbed a lighter from the mantelpiece. Don't, I whispered, my hand trembling against the window pane. Please, don't. Part of me wanted to smash the window and stop him. That diary was the only piece of my grandfather I had left. It was his voice. But the other part of me, the part that Mr. Abernathy had trained, the part that had been sharpened by years of neglect, stayed still. Let him do it, the voice in my head said. Let him destroy the evidence. Let him commit the crime. Tyler threw the diary into the fireplace. He flicked the lighter. He held the flame to the dry, brittle pages. The leather caught first, curling and blackening, then the paper. The fire roared to life, feeding on the ink and the truth of 30 years. Tyler stood there, watching it burn, a twisted smile on his face. He thought he was erasing the past. He thought that if the book was gone, the truth was gone. "Burn," he whispered. I heard him through the glass. "Burn it all down." I didn't stop recording. I filmed the flames consuming my grandfather's handwriting. I filmed Tyler poking the fire with the poker to make sure every page turned to ash. I filmed the look of pure malice on his face. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. I felt like I was watching my grandfather die all over again. But as the last page turned to gray ash, a cold calm settled over me. Tyler had just committed arson of personal property. He had broken and entered. He had destroyed evidence. I stopped the recording. I backed away from the window, moving silently across the grass until I reached the tree line. He thought he had won. He thought he had destroyed the only weapon I had. He didn't know that 3 days ago. I had paid a professional archivist to scan every single page of that diary at high resolution. He didn't know the digital files were encrypted on a drive in Mr. Abernathy's safe. He hadn't destroyed the truth. He had just signed his own arrest warrant. I walked back to my car, wiped the tears from my face, and started the engine. It was time to close the trap. The 2 weeks expired on a Sunday morning that was gray and heavy with impending rain. The timeline I had set in my email, 14 days of grace, had run its course down to the minute. According to the contract I had drafted, and they had ignored. They were supposed to be packed and off the property by 10 o'clock. I knew they would not be packing. I knew, from the way Tyler had installed the keypad, and the way Brittany had planted hydrangeas in my vegetable patch yesterday, that they were digging in. But I had to go through the motions. I had to issue the final command so that their refusal would be absolute and documented. I walked from the edge of the woods where I had parked my car. Approaching the main house, the broken French doors had been patch repaired with a sheet of plywood, a jagged scar on the face of my home. The smell of wood smoke still hung in the air, a ghostly reminder of the diary Tyler had burned in the hearth 3 days ago. I walked up the porch steps. I did not knock. I used my key, though I half expected the lock to have been changed on the front door as well. It turned. I stepped into the foyer. The house, my sanctuary of silence and order, smelled of stale pizza, expensive perfume, and wet dog. The hallway was cluttered with boxes that had been brought in from the barn. They had moved into the main house. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and dead. My mother appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a mug of my coffee. She looked rested. She looked like the lady of the manor. "Kayla," she said, blowing on her coffee, "you are early. We haven't even had brunch yet." "It is 10 o'clock. Mother," I said, standing in the doorway, refusing to fully enter the space that no longer felt like mine. "The 2 weeks are up. The agreement has expired. You need to leave." Tyler walked out of the living room. Scratching his stomach, he was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that said "Future Billionaire." He leaned against the door frame, a smirk playing on his lips. "Leave?" Tyler laughed, a dry, incredulous sound. "Kayla, look around. We just got settled. Brittany finally got the Wi-Fi extender working in the master bedroom. We are not going anywhere." "This is not a negotiation," I said, my hand tightening on my purse strap. "You have broken every rule I set. You destroyed my nursery. You broke my doors. You burned my property. And now, your time is up. If you are not off the premises by noon, I am calling the sheriff." I expected shouting. I expected Tyler to bluster or Brittany to cry. I did not expect my mother to smile. It was a cold, pitying smile, the kind one gives to a child who doesn't understand how the world works. She set her mug down on the console table, leaving a ring on the antique wood, and walked over to her purse. "Sit down, Kayla," she said. "I will not sit down." "Sit down," she commanded, her voice sharpening into the tone that had controlled my childhood. "We need to have a family discussion about the future of this estate." She pulled a folder from her bag. It was not the deed. It was a document I recognized vaguely. The paper yellowed slightly at the edges. Do you know what this is? She asked, holding it up. I squinted. It looks like a legal form. It is a durable power of attorney, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Do you remember your sophomore year of college? When you were going on that study abroad trip to Italy, you were so worried about your bank accounts and your student loans while you were overseas. You signed a stack of papers so I could manage your affairs. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I remembered. I had been 19. Naive and trusting. I had signed everything she put in front of me because she was my mother. That was for banking, I said. And it was over 10 years ago. I revoked that access. You revoked the bank access, she corrected smoothly. But you never formally revoked the power of attorney document itself. It is open-ended. Kayla, in the event of absence or incapacitation, I believe the wording says, I am not absent, I said, and I am certainly not incapacitated. Are you? She stepped closer, her eyes boring into mine. You are unstable. Kayla, you are a single woman living alone in a giant house, hoarding assets while your family suffers. You are clearly not thinking rationally. You are emotional. You are hysterical. She tossed the document onto the hallway table. I have spoken to our family lawyer, not that dinosaur Abernathy, but a real lawyer in the city. He says this document is still valid, and using this authority, acting in your best interest to relieve you of a burden you clearly cannot handle, I am initiating a transfer of the deed. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. You are stealing my house. I am correcting a mistake, she said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. This house should never have gone to you. Father was old. He was confused. He didn't understand the legacy of this family. I took care of him, I whispered, the hurt finally cracking through my armor. I was the one who changed his sheets. I fed him. I read to him. Tyler didn't visit once in 3 years. That is a daughter's job, Deborah snapped. Caregiving is what women do. It does not earn you a kingdom. Kayla, that is the natural order, she gestured to Tyler, who was now picking his teeth, looking bored. Tyler is the son, she said, as if stating a law of physics. He carries the Henshaw name. His children are Henshaws. You are just a temporary vessel. You will get married eventually if you are lucky, and you will change your name to Smith or Jones. And this property will be lost to our line. A woman is a dead end for a legacy. Kayla, the assets must go to the male heir to ensure the name survives. I stared at her. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me for 32 years. I had chased her approval. I had thought that if I was just successful enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, she would finally love me the way she loved Tyler. But she didn't just prefer him. She didn't see me as a person at all. To her, I was a utility. I was a nurse for her father, a bank account for her debts, and now, an obstacle to her dynasty. You don't love me, I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, spoken softly into the stale air of the foyer. Don't be dramatic, she waved her hand. I love you. That is why I am helping you downsize. We found a lovely studio apartment in the city center. It is small, manageable. We will pay the deposit. You can focus on your career. Meet a nice man. Leave the heavy lifting of land ownership to the men. The men, I repeated, looking at Tyler, who had never lifted anything heavier than a champagne flute in his life. The man who is being sued for fraud. The man who burned a diary because the truth hurt his feelings. He is your brother, she shouted, losing her cool for a fraction of a second. And he is the future of this family. Now, be a good girl. Pack your things. We have already moved most of your clothes to the guest room. Take what you need and go to a hotel until the apartment is ready. Do not make me call the police and have you removed for trespassing on what is effectively now Tyler's property. She believed it. She truly, deeply believed that a decade-old piece of paper and her own warped sense of entitlement gave her the right to erase my existence. My heart, which had been racing, suddenly slowed. It stopped pounding. It went still. The grief I expected to feel, the crushing weight of maternal rejection, did hit me. But it didn't break me. It calcified me. It turned the soft, hopeful parts of my soul into something hard and sharp, like the granite countertops in the kitchen. The mother I had yearned for was dead. She had never existed. This woman standing in front of me was a stranger, an enemy combatant. I looked at the power of attorney on the table. I knew, thanks to Mr. Abernathy, that the document was likely void because I had been present and competent for a decade, and because a newer will superseded it. But she didn't know that I knew. She wanted to play legal games. She wanted to use the law as a weapon. Fine, I said. My mother blinked. Fine. If you want to play by the law, Mother, we will play by the law, I said. I am not going to fight you physically. I am not going to drag you out. Smart girl, Tyler grinned. Finally using your brain. I will go, I said. I will pack a bag and I will leave. Good, Deborah breathed out, her shoulders relaxing. She thought she had won. She thought I was rolling over, just like I always did. Leave the keys on the table. I will keep my car keys, I said. I assume the house keys are irrelevant since you have changed the locks. I walked past them, up the stairs. I went to the master bedroom, my bedroom. Brittany's clothes were strewn across my bed. Her makeup cluttered my vanity. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her things. I calmly opened the closet, took my small overnight duffel, and packed 3 changes of clothes. I took my laptop. I took the hard drive from my safe, the one containing the digital scans of the diary and the security footage. I walked back downstairs. They were waiting in the foyer, watching me like hawks, making sure I didn't steal the silver. Goodbye, Mother, I said. This is for the best. Kayla, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. You will see. You will be happier without the burden. I walked out the door. I walked down the steps. I got into my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I looked up at the house, through the living room window. I saw them. Tyler was popping a bottle of champagne. Brittany was dancing, twirling around the room. My mother was sitting in her stolen armchair, raising a glass and a toast. They were celebrating. They were drinking to my defeat. They were toasting to the successful theft of my life. They had no idea. They thought my departure was a surrender. They did not understand that I was not fleeing. I was evacuating the blast zone, by forcing me out, by claiming ownership, by explicitly stating their intent to transfer the deed against my will. They had not just violated the residency clause, they had committed attempted grand larceny, they had provided the final, undeniable proof of hostile intent that Mr. Abernathy needed. I drove to the nearest hotel, a budget chain on the highway. I checked into room 204. I sat on the stiff mattress and dialed Mr. Abernathy's number. It is done, I said. My voice was steady. They claimed ownership. They produced a fraudulent power of attorney. They told me to leave. I am out. Did they explicitly threaten to transfer the title? Abernathy asked. Yes, Mother said she is initiating the transfer tomorrow. Then God help them, Abernathy said. Because the law certainly won't, I will file the emergency injunction in the morning. Rest, Kayla. The trap is sprung. I hung up. I lay back on the bed and stared at the popcorn ceiling. I felt a single tear slide from the corner of my eye into my ear. It was the last tear I would shed for Deborah Henshaw. I was homeless. I was betrayed. I was an orphan in every way that mattered. But as I closed my eyes, I didn't see the darkness. I saw the fire Tyler had started. And I knew that come Monday morning, that fire was going to consume them all. Monday morning arrived with the precision of a guillotine blade. I woke up in the hotel room at 6 a.m, not because of an alarm, but because my internal clock knew that the grace period was over. For the last 2 weeks, I had played the role of the victim. I had let them invade my space, insult my dignity, and trample my boundaries. I had let them believe that my departure yesterday was an act of surrender. But retreat is a military tactic, not a forfeit. I had left the house for one simple reason when a demolition crew brings down a building. You do not want to be standing in the living room at 8 in the morning. I sat in Mr. Abernathy's office. The air conditioning was humming, a stark contrast to the heat radiating from the coffee cup in my hands. Mr. Abernathy looked younger today. The lines of worry on his face had smoothed out, replaced by the sharp, predatory focus of a lawyer who finally had the smoking gun. "The papers were filed at the county courthouse at 7:30, Abernathy said, placing a stamped document on the desk between us. Emergency ex parte order for protection and eviction. We also filed a criminal complaint regarding the arson and the fraudulent power of attorney. And the evidence? I asked. The judge saw the video of Tyler burning the diary. Abernathy smiled grimly. He was not amused. Destroying estate property is a felony. But the real nail in the coffin was the recording of your mother admitting she intended to transfer the deed using an expired, revoked instrument. That is conspiracy to commit fraud. So, what happens now? Now, Abernathy said, leaning back in his leather chair. We activate the nuclear option, the residency clause. He picked up the phone on his desk. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. This is Silas Abernathy, trustee of the Henshaw Family Trust, he said into the receiver. Authorization code Alpha 9 Zulu, effective immediately. Suspend all disbursements to beneficiaries Deborah Henshaw and Tyler Henshaw due to violation of the no contest and anti-squatting provisions. Freeze the linked debit accounts. Mark the status as litigation pending. Yes, zero balance. Thank you. He hung up. I stared at the phone. That's it? That is it, Abernathy said. For 10 years, your mother has received $4,500 a month. She thought it was a pension. She never bothered to ask where it came from because she assumed the world owed her a living. She didn't know that the money came from the interest on the assets your grandfather left, assets that you legally control as the primary executor, but which I manage. As of 30 seconds ago, she is destitute. She won't know yet, I said. She will. Abernathy checked his watch. She usually goes to the gourmet grocery store on Monday mornings to buy imported cheese. Her card is going to be declined, but we have one more lever to pull before we send in the cavalry. I nodded. I pulled out my own phone. I dialed the customer service number for the county utility cooperative. Hello, I said when the operator answered. My name is Kayla Henshaw. I am the account holder for 1 Willow Creek Lane, account number 5582. Yes, I would like to request an immediate suspension of services. Suspension, ma'am, the operator asked. You mean a disconnect? I mean cut it all, I said, my voice cold. Electricity and water. There are squatters on the property who have changed the locks, and I refuse to pay for their utilities for one more minute. Shut it down. We can have a technician throw the remote breaker in about 10 minutes, the operator said. Do it, I said. I hung up. I looked at Abernathy. Now, he said, standing up and grabbing his coat. We go to the sheriff. The drive to Willow Creek felt different this time. I was not driving alone. I was in the passenger seat of Mr. Abernathy's sedan, following a marked Sheriff's Department cruiser. Sheriff Jim Miller was a man I had known since 3rd grade. We had sat next to each other in biology class in high school. He was a good man, a man who respected property lines and despised bullies. When I had shown him the video of Tyler burning the diary earlier that morning, his jaw had tightened in a way that boded very poorly for my brother. We turned onto the gravel driveway of Willow Creek at 10 in the morning. The house looked peaceful from a distance, the white siding gleaming in the weak sunlight. But as we got closer, I saw the signs of occupation. There was trash on the porch. The expensive SUV was parked on the grass, leaving deep ruts in the turf. The convoy stopped. Sheriff Miller stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt. He was flanked by 2 deputies. I stayed in Abernathy's car. The windows were tinted. I could see out, but they could not see in. I wanted to witness this, but I did not want to speak to them. I had said my goodbye yesterday. Sheriff Miller walked up the steps and pounded on the front door. The sound echoed across the yard. Sheriff's Department, open up. Nothing happened for a moment. Then, the door swung open. It was Tyler. He was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, looking disheveled. He blinked at the sunlight and then at the uniforms. "What is this?" Tyler demanded, trying to summon the authority of a CEO. "We didn't call the police, unless you are here to remove my sister. She has been harassing us." "Tyler Henshaw?" Sheriff Miller asked, his voice flat. "Yes. Who are you?" "I am Sheriff Miller. I have a court order for your immediate removal from this property, and I have an arrest warrant for arson, destruction of property, and criminal trespassing." Tyler laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Arson. Are you insane? I burned some old paper in a fireplace. It is my house. My mother owns it. Where is she? Mom." Deborah appeared behind him. She looked frazzled. Her hair was half-curled, and she was holding her smartphone, tapping the screen frantically. "My data isn't working," she was muttering, "and the Wi-Fi just cut out. Tyler, fix the router." She looked up and saw the police. "What is going on? Why are there police at my house?" "Ma'am, this is not your house," Sheriff Miller said, stepping onto the porch. "This property belongs to Kayla Henshaw. You are here in violation of a standing deed and have ignored a notice to vacate." "I have power of attorney," Deborah shrieked, waving a hand as if she held an invisible scepter. "I evicted her. I am the matriarch of this family." "The power of attorney you are referring to was revoked in 2016, Miller said, consulting a clipboard. "Attempting to use it to transfer a title is fraud. Mrs. Henshaw, now, I need everyone to step out of the house. Immediately." "No," Tyler said. He planted his feet. "We are not going anywhere. This is a civil matter. You cannot arrest me for a dispute between siblings. Get off my porch." "Sir, this is a criminal warrant," Miller said, placing a hand on his taser. "Step out here, now." "I said get off," Tyler lunged. It was the stupidest thing he had ever done in a life defined by stupidity. He shoved Sheriff Miller. The reaction was instantaneous. Miller didn't even draw the taser. He sidestepped, grabbed Tyler's wrist, and spun him around. He kicked Tyler's legs out from under him. Tyler hit the porch floor face first with a sickening thud. "Get off me! Do you know who I am?" Tyler screamed, his face pressed against the wood planks he had once called a pigsty. "You are a suspect assaulting an officer," Miller said calmly, kneeling on Tyler's back and clicking the handcuffs into place. "Tyler Henshaw, you are under arrest." "Mom, do something," Tyler yelled. Deborah stood frozen in the doorway. She looked at her son, handcuffed on the floor. She looked at the deputies who were now moving past her to clear the house. "You cannot do this," she stammered, her voice losing its power. "I will call my lawyer. I will sue this entire department." She tapped her phone again. Then she looked at the screen with horror. "Why is my card declined?" she whispered. "I just got the notification. Why is my account locked?" I watched from the car. I saw the moment the reality hit her. She had no house. She had no money. She had no power. Brittany came running out of the house, holding her youngest child, the two poodles barking wildly around her legs. "They cut the water," she was screaming. "I was in the shower and the water just stopped." "What is happening?" "You are being evicted, ma'am," a deputy said, guiding her down the steps. "You need to move to your vehicle." "But my things," she wailed. "My clothes, my skincare." "You can arrange for a mover to collect them under police supervision at a later date," the deputy said. "Right now, the premises are being sealed." I watched as they dragged Tyler down the steps. He was weeping now, all the bluster gone, replaced by the terrified sobbing of a man who had never faced a consequence in 30 years. "Kayla," he screamed, scanning the driveway until his eyes locked onto Abernathy's car. He couldn't see me, but he knew I was there. "Kayla, tell them it is a mistake. I am your brother." I sat perfectly still. I watched his face red, snot-streaked, pathetic. This was the boy who had mocked my career, This was the man who had stolen my mother's love. This was the monster who had burned my grandfather's words. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't look away. I just watched. Mr. Abernathy turned to me. Do you want to say anything to them? No, I said. I have nothing to say. Sheriff Miller shoved Tyler into the back of the cruiser. Deborah was standing by her car, arguing with a deputy who was explaining that she could not stay in the driveway. She looked small. She looked old. She looked ordinary. Let's go, I said to Abernathy. I have work to do. You don't want to go in? Not yet, I said. The air needs to clear. It still smells like them. Abernathy nodded and put the car in reverse. As we backed out of the driveway, I saw my mother look up. She saw the car leaving. For a split second, our eyes met through the tinted glass. I saw the realization dawn on her face. She wasn't just losing a house. She was realizing that the daughter she had thrown away was the only person who had been keeping her alive. And now, I was gone. We drove away, leaving them to the silence of a house with no power, and the noise of a life falling apart. The trap had not just sprung, it had shattered their world. And as we turned onto the main road, for the first time in years, I took a breath that didn't catch in my throat. It tasted like ozone and victory. The civil courtroom smelled of floor wax and old mahogany, a scent that was meant to command respect, but only made me feel nauseous. It was 3 weeks after the arrest. Tyler was out on bail. The bond posted by a frantic Brittany who had sold her engagement ring, a ring I later learned was a cubic zirconia fake. Much to the pawnbroker's amusement, we were not here for the criminal charges today. That trial was set for the spring. We were here for the civil hearing regarding the permanent restraining order and the damages suit my mother had counterfiled, claiming elder abuse and wrongful eviction. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Mr. Abernathy. My hands were folded in my lap. I wore a charcoal gray suit, the same one I wore to present 6-figure bids to city councils. Across the aisle, my family sat. My mother, Deborah, was unrecognizable. She was not wearing her usual Chanel. She was dressed in a frumpy beige cardigan that was 2 sizes too big, and she was leaning on a cane I had never seen her use before. She looked frail, small, and utterly pathetic. It was a performance that would have garnered a standing ovation on Broadway. Tyler sat next to her, twitching. He looked thinner. The arrogance that usually coated him like a second skin was gone, replaced by a jittery, cornered animal look. Their lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who wore a suit that cost more than my car, stood up to address the judge. Your Honor, Sterling began, his voice dripping with honeyed concern. This case is a tragedy, a simple tragedy. We have here an elderly woman, a devoted mother, who sought refuge with her daughter during a financial crisis. And how was she repaid? She was locked out. She was starved. She was humiliated. And finally, she was thrown to the police like a common criminal by her own flesh and blood. He gestured to me with a theatrical sweep of his hand. Ms. Henshaw claims she was protecting her property. We argue she was exacting a cruel, vindictive punishment on a family she has always resented for their success. We ask the court to deny the restraining order and grant Mrs. Henshaw the financial support she is entitled to under the familial responsibility laws of this state. I didn't flinch. I didn't look at my mother, who was dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Ms. Henshaw, the judge said, looking over his spectacles, please take the stand. I walked to the witness box. I swore to tell the truth. The court clerk looked at me with tired eyes. Sterling approached me like a shark smelling blood in the water. Ms. Henshaw, he said, leaning on the railing, is it true that you cut off the water and electricity while your mother, a 65-year-old woman with a heart condition, was residing in the home? It is true that I suspended services to a property that was being illegally occupied by squatters who had changed the locks to bar my entry, I replied. My voice was steady. I am not responsible for the utilities of trespassers. Trespassers, Sterling scoffed. They are your family. Your mother raised you. Do you think a few days of inconvenience justifies endangering her health? My mother is not on the deed, I said. She has no lease. She had been asked to leave verbally and in writing. When she refused and claimed ownership, she ceased to be a guest and became a hostile occupant. You are cold, aren't you? Sterling asked, trying to rattle me. You kept a 4-acre estate to yourself while your brother's children had nowhere to go. Did you enjoy seeing them suffer? Did it make you feel powerful? Objection, Abernathy said lazily from his seat. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Move on, counselor. Sterling grilled me for another 20 minutes, trying to paint me as the jealous, ugly duckling taking revenge on the beautiful swans. I answered every question with facts, dates, times, specific legal statutes. I did not give him the emotion he wanted. I gave him architecture structured, unyielding, and concrete. When Sterling sat down, looking frustrated, Mr. Abernathy stood up. He didn't walk to the podium. He walked to the evidence table. Your Honor, Abernathy said, his voice rasping slightly. The defense paints a picture of a loving matriarch wrongfully dispossessed. They claim Deborah Henshaw has a moral, if not legal, right to the property based on family tradition. I would like to introduce Exhibit C. He held up a flash drive. What is this? The judge asked. This, Abernathy said, is a digital forensic copy of the personal journals of the late Arthur James Henshaw. The original journals were destroyed by the defendant, Tyler Henshaw, in an act of arson 3 weeks ago. Fortunately, my client is a prudent woman who digitized the records before the incident. Tyler let out a gasp. I heard it from the stand. He gripped the edge of the table, his face draining of color. He thought he had burned the truth. He thought Ash told no tales. Objection, Sterling shouted. We haven't authenticated this. The metadata is verified by a third-party forensic team, Abernathy said calmly. It is admissible. I would like to read an entry dated June 4th, 2005. The judge nodded. Proceed. Abernathy put on his reading glasses. The courtroom went silent. My daughter Deborah came to me today. Abernathy read. The voice wasn't his. In the silence, it sounded like Grandpa Arthur was speaking from the grave. She asked for $50,000. She said it was for my hip surgery. She said the insurance had denied the claim. I wrote the check. I trusted her. Abernathy paused. He turned a page. August 10th, 2005. I called the hospital. The surgery was fully covered by Medicare. There was no denial. Deborah cashed the check at a casino in Atlantic City. I confronted her. She laughed. She said I owed it to her. She said I owed her for being the one who took her in. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Took her in? The judge asked, frowning. Abernathy looked up. Yes, Your Honor. The journal continues. I should never have adopted her. I thought blood didn't matter, that I could raise her to be honest. But the rot is deep. She is not a Henshaw by blood, and she has proven she is not one by character. She is a thief. I cannot disown her publicly without shaming the family name. But I will not let her destroy my legacy. That is why I am leaving everything to Kayla. She is the only one who cares for me, not my wallet. Deborah thinks she is entitled to the kingdom. She is entitled to nothing but the lies she spins. I looked at my mother. She was not crying anymore. She was frozen, her mouth slightly open. The secret she had guarded for 60 years, the fact that she was adopted, that she wasn't the biological heir she always claimed to be, was out. Her entire identity, her superiority complex about bloodlines and legacy, was a fabrication. She wasn't the matriarch. She was a fraud. Lies, Deborah whispered, shaking her head. That old fool was senile. He didn't know what he was writing. The journal was written 10 years before his death, when he was of sound mind, Abernathy said, closing the folder. It documents 15 years of embezzlement. Deborah Henshaw stole nearly $200,000 from her father under the guise of medical care. That is why she was disinherited, not because Kayla manipulated him, but because Arthur was protecting what was left. This is irrelevant, Sterling argued, though he looked pale. Past actions do not justify current eviction. It goes to character and intent, the judge said coldly. Continue. Mr. Abernathy. Thank you, Abernathy said. Exhibit D, the power of attorney document Mrs. Henshaw attempted to use to transfer the deed. He projected an image onto the screen in the courtroom. It showed the signature at the bottom of the document. This is the document Mrs. Henshaw claims my client signed in 2015. Abernathy said. However, handwriting analysis shows something interesting. The pressure points on the signature are perfectly uniform. There is no natural variation in pen stroke. It is a tracing. He clicked a button. Another image appeared, a permission slip for a college field trip from 2011. This is the source document, Abernathy said. If you overlay them, they are a 100% match, down to the pixel. Mrs. Henshaw didn't just use an old form. She physically forged the signature using a lightbox and a document my client signed 4 years prior. The judge looked at Deborah. His expression was one of absolute disgust. Mrs. Henshaw, the judge asked, his voice low and dangerous. Did you forge your daughter's signature to steal her home? I? Deborah stammered. She looked at Sterling, but her lawyer was busy organizing his papers, distancing himself from the sinking ship. I did it for the family. It belongs to Tyler. It has to go to the son. Because of the bloodline, the judge asked dryly. The bloodline you don't actually share. It doesn't matter. Tyler suddenly screamed. He stood up, knocking his chair over. The bailiff took a step forward, hand on his holster. It doesn't matter what the papers say, Tyler yelled, his face purple with rage. He pointed a trembling finger at me. Look at her. Look at her sitting there with her smug face. She has everything. She has the house. She has the land. She has the career. And what do we have? Nothing. We have nothing. Sit down, sir, the bailiff commanded. No, Tyler shouted, tears streaming down his face. She is selfish. She watched us drown. She has 4 acres and she couldn't spare 1 room. She is a monster. She has it all. The courtroom was dead silent. The echo of his scream hung in the air. I looked at him. I looked at the brother who had been given private schools, cars, startup capital, and unconditional love. I looked at the mother who had stolen from her own father to fund his failures. I stood up. I didn't ask for permission. I have it all, I repeated, my voice quiet but carrying to the back of the room. Yes, Tyler hissed. You are right, Tyler, I said. I have the house. Do you know why? Because when Grandpa was dying, when he was soiling his bedsheets and forgetting his own name, I was there. I was the one washing him. I was the one feeding him with a spoon. Where were you? You were in Ibiza. You were networking. You sent a postcard. I turned to my mother. And you, I said, you say I have everything. For 30 years, you looked at me and saw a servant. You looked at Tyler and saw a king. You gave him your money. You gave him your praise. You gave him your heart. I had to scrape for every ounce of respect I ever got. I built my career while you told me I was wasting my time playing with dirt. I fixed that house with my own hands while you called it a pigsty. I took a deep breath. You had all the love, I said. You had all the support. You had a head start that most people would kill for, and you squandered it. You burned it. And now you stand here and tell me I am selfish because I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm one last time. I looked at the judge, then back at them. I have only these 2 hands, I said, holding them up. They were calloused from gardening, stained with ink from drafting. They are tired of carrying you. I am done. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. And I am certainly not your victim anymore. I sat down. Tyler looked like he had been slapped. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He slumped back into his chair, defeated by the sheer weight of the truth. The judge cleared his throat. He shuffled his papers, aligning them with precise, angry movements. I have heard enough, the judge said. The behavior of the respondents in this case is frankly reprehensible. The court finds that Deborah Henshaw and Tyler Henshaw have engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment, fraud, and destruction of property. He looked at me. Ms. Henshaw, your petition for a permanent restraining order is granted. Deborah Henshaw and Tyler Henshaw are to remain 500 yards away from you, your place of employment, and the property at Willow Creek indefinitely. Any violation of this order will result in immediate incarceration. The judge turned his glare to the defense table. Furthermore, regarding the damages, based on the evidence of the destroyed nursery stock, the broken doors, the unauthorized utility usage, and the destruction of the heirloom journals, I am awarding the plaintiff damages in the amount of $25,000. Additionally, due to the malicious nature of the fraud, I am ordering the defendants to pay the plaintiff's legal fees in full. We can't pay that, Deborah wailed. We have no money. The trust is frozen. Then I suggest you get jobs, the judge said, banging his gavel. Case closed. The sound of the gavel was the sweetest music I had ever heard. I stood up. Mr. Abernathy patted me on the shoulder. Well done, Kayla, he whispered. Your grandfather is smiling. I watched as the bailiff escorted Tyler and Deborah out. They didn't look at me. They were arguing with each other, their voices rising in a cacophony of blame. You said the lawyer could fix it. You said she would fold. They were already eating each other alive. I gathered my purse. I walked out of the courtroom, past the stunned face of Mr. Sterling, past the gallery of curious onlookers. I walked out into the hallway and pushed open the heavy double doors to the street. The air outside was fresh. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds. I checked my phone. I had a notification from my security system. System armed. Perimeter secure. It was over. The court of law had ruled. But more importantly, the court of my own conscience had finally delivered a verdict. I was not guilty of their failures. I was free. The parking lot of the county courthouse was a vast, desolate expanse of gray concrete. Baking under the sudden brilliance of the midday sun, it was the kind of harsh, unforgiving light that exposed every crack in the pavement and every flaw in a person's face. I walked toward my car, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the asphalt. The restraining order was folded neatly in my purse, a piece of paper that theoretically guaranteed my safety. But paper is just wood pulp and ink. It cannot stop a desperate woman. I saw her before I reached my sedan. She was standing between two parked trucks, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. She had sent Tyler ahead, or perhaps he had abandoned her the moment the gavel fell to go find a drink. She was alone. Technically, she was already violating the order. 500 yards. She was 5 feet away. I stopped. I didn't reach for my phone to call the sheriff. I didn't retreat to the safety of the courthouse security. There was a finality in the air, a sense that the storm had passed and we were just surveying the wreckage. I unlocked my car, threw my bag into the passenger seat, and turned to face her. You are violating a court order. Deborah, I said. I didn't call her mother. That title had been burned in the fireplace along with Grandpa's diary. I have nowhere to go, she said. Her voice was not the screeching weapon she had used in the penthouse, nor the pathetic whimper she had affected for the judge. It was a dry, rasping sound of total defeat. The cards are declined. All of them. Even the gas card. That tends to happen when you're removed from a trust for fraud, I said, leaning against my car door. You should ask Tyler for help. He is the businessman. Isn't he the visionary? She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Tyler is currently in the passenger seat of his wife's car, screaming at her to sell her handbag so he can hire a criminal defense attorney. He doesn't care if I eat or starve. He never has. She looked up at me. And for the first time in my life, I saw her eyes without the filter of her ego. They were terrified. I am 65 years old. Kayla, she said. I have no savings. I have no pension. I have no home. The trust fund, Mr. Abernathy said it is gone. He said I'm cut off. Forever. He followed the protocol, I said. Protocol. She stepped closer, her hands shaking. It is a death sentence. You are doing this out of spite. You think because I favored him, I deserve to die on the street. I am your mother. I fed you. You did, I acknowledged, and I have fed you for the last 10 years. She frowned, confusion wrinkling her forehead. What are you talking about? My money came from the Henshaw estate, from my father's legacy. It was automatic. I looked at her, and the secret I had carried for a decade finally rose to my throat. It was not a scream. It was a quiet, devastating fact. Nothing is automatic, Deborah, I said softly. The Henshaw Family Trust is not a bottomless pit of money that dispenses cash by magic. It is a managed fund. It requires oversight. It requires a trustee to review every request, every withdrawal, every monthly stipend. So Abernathy manages it. She waved her hand dismissively. He is just a lawyer. Abernathy is the administrator, I corrected her. He handles the paperwork, but he doesn't make the decisions. The trust documents that Grandpa Arthur signed in 2005, the ones you never bothered to read because you were too busy spending the money, appointed a single sole trustee with absolute veto power over all disbursements. I paused, letting the silence stretch between us. A car drove past on the main road, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. I am the trustee, Mom. She stared at me. She blinked, once, twice, as if I was speaking a language she did not understand. You, she whispered. No, that is impossible. You were 22. You were a child. I was 22. I nodded. And I was the only person Grandpa trusted not to snort the money up my nose or gamble it away in Atlantic City. He left the house to me, yes, but he also gave me the keys to the vault. He wanted to cut you off completely. He wanted to leave you with nothing but your Social Security check. I stepped away from the car, walking until I was just inches from her. I stopped him, I said. I sat by his deathbed, and I begged him not to leave you destitute. I told him that despite everything, you were my mother. I promised him that if he put me in charge, I would make sure you were taken care of. I promised him I would manage the money so you wouldn't starve. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. For 10 years, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Every single month, Mr. Abernathy sent me a docket. Deborah requested $4,000 for a new wardrobe. Deborah requested funds for a trip to Cabo. Deborah exceeded her stipend by 15%, and every single month, for 120 months, I signed the approval form, me, the daughter you called selfish, the daughter you called a failure. No, she breathed, backing away. You are lying. I bought your penthouse, I said relentlessly. I approved the down payment. I paid for Tyler's 3 failed startups because I knew if I didn't, he would come to you and drain your account. I have been subsidizing your entire life, paying for the very pedestal you stood on to look down on me. Why, she asked, her voice cracked, if you had the power, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me treat you like that? Because I wanted a mother, I said, the truth finally breaking my voice. I thought that if I was good enough, if I was generous enough, if I just kept the safety net under you, eventually you would look down and see me. I thought I could buy your love with loyalty. I shook my head, wiping away a stray tear that had escaped. But I was wrong. You didn't see me. You just saw the money. And when the money got tight, when your golden boy set fire to your life, you didn't come to me for help. You came to steal the one thing that was actually mine. You tried to take my home. You tried to erase me. She looked at me with horror. The realization was crashing down on her. The daughter she had mocked for working in the dirt was the same daughter who had signed the checks that kept her in silk. She had bitten the hand that fed her, and now she was realizing that the hand was gone. Kayla, she whimpered, reaching out a hand. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know. Please, you can't let this happen. I can't live in a shelter. I am too old. I am your mother. She looked at her nails. Manicured perfectly, a manicure I had likely approved payment for last week. You are right, I said. You are my mother, and unlike you, I do not abandon family. I am not going to let you sleep on the street. Hope flared in her eyes. It was pathetic and greedy. Oh, thank God. I knew it. I knew you were a good girl. We can fix this. I can move into a small apartment, maybe near the park. No. I cut her off. The word was sharp, like a pruning shear. No. I am not giving you cash, I said. I am not giving you an apartment. And I am certainly not giving you access to the trust ever again. That part of your life is over. I reached into my purse and pulled out a brochure I had picked up from Mr. Abernathy's office. I shoved it into her hand. This is the Shady Oaks Senior Living Community, I said. It is about 40 minutes north of here. It is not a luxury resort. There is no spa. There is no room service. You will share a room with another resident, but it is clean. They serve 3 meals a day, and they have a bingo night. She looked at the brochure as if it were a dead rat. A nursing home, a state facility. It is private, but affordable, I said. I will pay the monthly fee directly to the facility. I will provide you with a stipend of $200 a month for personal items. That is it. That is the offer. $200? She gasped. That won't even cover my hair appointments. Then learn to do your own hair, I said coldly. Or let it go gray. You are destitute. Deborah, you don't get to demand luxury from the person you just sued. And Tyler, she asked, what about your brother? My expression hardened into stone. Tyler is 34 years old, I said. He has 2 hands and 2 feet. He is not my responsibility. He never was. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to float his ego. I am done. He gets 0, not a penny. If he wants to eat, he can get a job. If he wants a place to sleep, he can go to a shelter. If I see a single dollar of my money go to him, if I find out you are smuggling your bingo money to him, I will cut you off completely. And that is a promise. He will go to prison, she cried. Without a good lawyer, they will convict him of arson. Then he will go to prison, I said. Maybe he will learn a trade inside. They have excellent woodworking programs. I stepped back. I felt light. The burden of 30 years, the heavy, suffocating weight of trying to please these people, had lifted. You have 24 hours to decide, I said. Call Mr. Abernathy if you want the room at Shady Oaks. If not, good luck on the street. Kayla, wait. She grabbed at my sleeve. You can't leave me like this. I am your mother. Does that mean nothing? I looked at her hand on my arm. It was a claw, grasping and desperate. I gently, but firmly, peeled her fingers off my suit jacket. It means everything, I said. It means I am giving you a roof over your head instead of the jail cell you deserve for fraud. That is what being a daughter means to me today. Whatever it means to you, well. You have the rest of your life to think about that. I turned around and walked to the driver's side door. Kayla, she screamed, her voice cracking. I love you. I always loved you. I paused with my hand on the handle. I looked back at her one last time. She was standing in the middle of the empty parking lot, a small, broken figure in an oversized beige cardigan, clutching a brochure for a budget nursing home. No, Mom, I said, my voice carrying across the asphalt. You love the idea of a family. You loved the reflection of yourself you saw in Tyler. You never loved me. You just loved what I could do for you. I got into the car. I started the engine. I put it in drive and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her collapse. She didn't faint gracefully like a heroine in a movie. She just crumpled, sliding down the side of the truck next to her until she was a heap on the ground. She was weeping, her face in her hands. For a moment, a pang of instinctual guilt hit me, the old programming trying to reboot. But then I touched the scar on my thumb, the one I got from planting the rose bushes she had never looked at, and the guilt vanished. She was crying because the bank was closed. She was crying because the ATM had walked away. I turned onto the highway, merging into the traffic that flowed away from the courthouse. away from the city and back toward the quiet, green hills of Willow Creek. I rolled down the window. The air rushed in, loud and chaotic, drowning out the memory of her voice. I was going home, to my home, to the house that Grandpa gave me, to the life I had built, and for the first time, the foundation felt solid. 6 months have passed since the gavel fell in that mahogany-paneled courtroom, and Willow Creek has forgotten the sound of screaming. Spring has arrived in full force, sweeping across the valley with a vibrancy that feels apologetic for the harshness of the winter we endured. The old oak trees, the silent witnesses to my family's implosion, are heavy with fresh, bright green leaves. The gravel driveway, once rutted by Tyler's SUV and the police cruisers, has been regraded and topped with smooth river stones that crunch satisfyingly underfoot. The house itself has healed. The French doors that Tyler smashed have been replaced with double-paned, energy-efficient glass that floods the living room with light. The fireplace, the site of the arson that tried to erase my history, has been scrubbed clean of soot. I had a mason come in and retile the hearth with local slate. It looks stronger now. It looks like it can withstand fire. I was standing in the kitchen, slicing lemons for iced tea. The granite countertop was cool under my fingers. It was Saturday evening. The windows were open, letting in the scent of jasmine and freshly turned earth. I thought about where I was 6 months ago, hiding in a hotel room, terrified of my own mother. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like a story that happened to someone else. I put the knife down and looked out the window toward the barn. The barn was no longer just my office. It had evolved. Using the settlement money from the damages money that Tyler and Deborah had been forced to liquidate their last remaining assets to pay, I had launched the project I had been dreaming of since college. I called it the Sprout Initiative. It was a horticultural therapy center for at-risk youth, twice a week. A van from the city brought out 10 teenagers, kids who had grown up in the foster system, kids who had been told they were mistakes, kids who felt just as invisible as I once did. We didn't just plant flowers. We taught them how to build soil. We taught them that if you nurture something, if you are patient with it, it will grow, no matter how rocky the ground started out. I watched through the window as a group of them finished up their afternoon session. They were laughing, their hands covered in mud. Their faces relaxed in a way that only nature can induce. They were healing the land, and in turn, the land was healing them. The irony was not lost on me. My mother had screamed that I was selfish, that I refused to house children. Now, my home was a sanctuary for children who actually needed it, children who didn't demand luxury, but just needed a safe place to put down roots. As for the children who shared my blood, I heard through the grapevine small towns talk. After all that Tyler was finally learning the value of manual labor. He was working at a car wash on the south side of the county. He was not the manager. He was the guy who scrubbed the rims. Brittany had left him 3 weeks after the trial. Apparently, her vows were contingent on a certain credit limit. She had moved back to her parents' house in Florida, taking the kids and the poodles. Tyler was living in a studio apartment above a garage, riding a bicycle because his license was suspended due to unpaid fines. I drove past that car wash once. About a month ago, I saw him. He was wearing a blue jumpsuit, wiping down a sedan. He looked older. He looked tired. He looked up as I drove by. And for a second, I thought he was going to flip me off. But he didn't. He just looked down at the rag in his hand and kept scrubbing. It was the first honest work he had done in his life. Maybe, just maybe, it would make a man out of him yet. And Deborah, I visited her at Shady Oaks on the first Sunday of every month. It was a condition I set for myself, a way to monitor the investment I was making in her care. The facility was decent. It smelled of antiseptic and cafeteria soup. But the staff was kind. During my last visit, she had complained for 20 minutes about the texture of the scrambled eggs and the fact that her roommate, a lovely woman named Mrs. Higgins, snored. "I shouldn't be here. Kayla," she had whined, adjusting the shawl I had bought her. "I belong in a private suite. The staff here treats me like I am nobody. You are somebody. Mom, I had said, placing a box of peppermint tea on her nightstand. You are a resident, you are safe, and you have a roof over your head. It is humiliating, she sniffed. Do you know, Mrs. Higgins asked me what my son does. What am I supposed to tell her that he washes cars? Tell her the truth, I said, standing up to leave. Tell her he is starting over, like you are. She didn't have the power to hurt me anymore. Her guilt trips were like blunt arrows bouncing off a stone wall. She was just a bitter old woman learning that the world does not bow to people who offer nothing but demands. I finished making the tea and carried the pitcher out to the back porch. Tonight was a celebration. It wasn't a gala. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a housewarming party. 6 months late, but right on time. The patio was filled with people. Not connections, not investors. Friends, Marcus, my boss from Viridia Design, was manning the grill, arguing playfully with Sheriff Miller about the proper way to sear a steak. Several of my colleagues were sitting on the retaining wall, admiring the terracing work I had done, and sitting in the best wicker chair, holding a glass of aged scotch, was Mr. Abernathy. Kayla, Abernathy called out as I stepped onto the porch. Come here. A toast is in order. The chatter died down. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt a flush of heat, not from shame, but from a strange, unfamiliar feeling. Pride. Abernathy stood up, his joints popping audibly. He raised his glass. The amber liquid caught the light of the setting sun. To Kayla, he said, his gravelly voice carrying across the garden. Arthur Henshaw was a stubborn old mule. He made a lot of mistakes in his life. But his greatest decision, the one thing he got absolutely right, was betting on this young woman. He looked at me, his eyes shining. You didn't just save the house, kid. You saved the legacy. You turned a place of contention into a place of peace. And most importantly, you did it without losing your soul. You kept your dignity when everyone around you was losing theirs. To the Lady of Willow Creek. To Kayla, the group chorused. I smiled, raising my glass of iced tea. To Grandpa Arthur, I whispered. The party wound down as the stars began to prick the velvet canopy of the sky. One by one, the cars drove down the gravel lane, taillights fading into the darkness. Sheriff Miller gave me a hug, telling me to call if I ever needed anything, though we both knew the threats were gone. By 10 o'clock, I was alone. I sat on the front porch swing, the one I had sanded and repainted myself. The night was silent, save for the chorus of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl in the barn rafters. I looked out over the 4 acres. In the moonlight, the nursery looked like a silver sea. The house was solid behind me, a fortress that held me, not a prison that trapped me. I had no debt. I had no toxic secrets. I had no one waiting to steal my peace. My phone buzzed on the swing seat beside me. I picked it up. The screen lit up the darkness. It was an unknown number. No caller ID. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew who it was. It was late on a Saturday night. Tyler was probably drunk, or lonely, or needing money, or maybe it was Mom, using a nurse's phone to beg for a premium cable package. 6 months ago, I would have answered. I would have felt the obligation clawing at my throat. I would have listened to the abuse, the manipulation, the lies. I looked at the buzzing phone. I looked at the name of the caller unknown. You are right, I said to the empty air. You are unknown to me now. I pressed the side button. I didn't decline the call. I just silenced it. I turned the phone face down on the cushion. I leaned back, pushed the swing with my foot, and closed my eyes. I listened to the silence. It was heavy, and rich, and entirely mine. The ghost of perfection was gone. The dawn had come to Willow Creek, and the view was spectacular. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Kayla's journey of standing her ground gave you a sense of satisfaction. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a busy city, a quiet countryside, or somewhere in between, please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on how Kayla handled her family. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the Sunday Drama Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a little inspiration to set their own boundaries. See you in the next story.